Okay. Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Doctor Who review, episode 47. Now, I mentioned in the last video, which I did yesterday for this one, that I was discussing the first part of the Black Guardian trilogy with this episode. As a matter of fact, the next three basically will be discussing that. First we have is the Mawdryn Undead. Yeah, this is DVD cover for the Black Guardian trilogy. And that's the Black Guardian. Same actor who played him in Armageddon Factor. Same exact actor came back for this one. I'm like, that's quite ingenious, because normally sometimes basically they would change actors. My guess is because the actor is probably available, and they figured though, why not revisit one of the most popular stories in history of Doctor Who for the 20th anniversary. Now the Mawdryn Undead is basically a return of two particular characters, plus debut of a brand new character. That being Turlough. Yes, his debut here. We also see return of the Brigadier. First time since 1975's Terror of the Zygons. Yes, after 8 years being away, he is back in his third to last appearance in classic Doctor Who. Because after this story, he appeared twice after this. First in the 20th anniversary special, which I have discussed that one, and Battlefield, which I'll discuss in the future. Now, there's about a couple different things going on here. The Doctor, of course, from his perspective, this is coming right after the events of the previous story, Snake Dance. I will discuss in the future when I get hands on DVD itself. Because Tegan is feeling the effects of that, even though I haven't reviewed it, I have seen it. It's a very interesting story. It's involving a giant snake that's red and white, and it's a sequel to a story from the previous season. Not sure why they decided to do this for the 20th season of the show. I mean, the Black Guardian makes sense because he's from Doctor Who history at this point, though he has not been seen at this point in time, not been in about 4 years. So, first we see Turlough, where he and another kid are basically just taking a car for a joyride. Yes, a car looks like it's from possibly the 60s. It's hardly able to drive it, no problem. Which is surprising for a teenager who doesn't have a license. And then he crashed. And by the way, it turns out, they find out a little later, this car actually belongs to the Brigadier. Yep. And he returns here without his mustache. Yeah, for some reason, the actor decided to shave his mustache up for some reason. I have no idea why. Then, of course, then we have Turlough, where he survives the crash. Well, while making a deal with the Black Guardian, who's wearing a completely different outfit than he wore last time. He also has this goofy bird in his head now. Yes, for some reason, he got this goofy crow in his head. Which, by the way, when they had the White Guardian show up at the end of the story, he's got the same thing in his hair, too. No explanation for this of why the heck they decided to. Okay, so they brought back the same actor, except they completely changed the attire. I mean, I love the suit that they put him in, which I thought was really cool. The problem is the hair. Why the bird? That makes no freaking sense. Like, oh yeah, I'm the Black Guardian, which the way they introduced him the first time is like he's all in negative color. Now he's just normal guy who's looks like an old man. Well, because the actor was. And here's the strange thing about the story after this story wrapped up. Sadly, 2 years after this three-parter wrapped up, the actor himself who played the Black Guardian would pass away. Yes, seriously. And you know the strange thing is? The Black Guardian has appeared more times than the White Guardian does? The White Guardian has only appeared twice in Doctor Who. The Ravens Operation and actually the finale of this story arc. Also played by the same actor, and they're both clean-shaven. Now, why in the world they got rid of their goatees? Never explained. And why the change of style for him? Even though, yes, it's been a few years, it just seems kind of weird that you just ignore how he previously appeared. You see like this negative thing because he's a Black Guardian. My only guess is the writer of the story, which is Peter Grindle. Yeah, he wrote the first part, the Mawdryn Undead. He probably want to update the suit. He probably want to update him to basically be a bit more modern for the 80s. But only been 4 years. So he agrees to work with him, and then he wakes up in a hospital bed. Well, actually, he wakes up, basically he's groggy, And then apparently he wakes up again in the hospital, in basically the medical ward of a school he basically is attending. Whereas this crystal about this big, this white crystal, which apparently is connected to the Black Guardian. Yep, now people can see the crystal, yes. People probably don't know what the heck thing is for. So, his job is to simply kill the Doctor. That is seriously his plan. That's what he wants to do. But stuff has to be done. Then of course he has to go to a transmat thing to go to a ship. Yes, a ship which looks like a luxury ship. But the ship has got a dark secret. What is the dark secret, might ask? A bunch of mutant scientists on board. 8 of them. Which the first time I've seen him moving, they're like gliding across the floor and then they're walking normally never seen. Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. So, then we have the Doctor, Nyssa, and Tegan arrive at this thing, but they can't exactly leave because of the transmat beam of this ball. So, they use it. They use the thing of back and forth to Earth in 1983. That's one thing interesting though about this story. They do frequently mention the year it's set in. And then, of course, when they try to free the TARDIS, it gets sent back 6 years to 1977. This could be like 2 years after the Doctor was last seen in the series, Terror of the Zygons. So basically about 2 years after he was last seen. Excuse me, yes. So 2 years after he was last seen, he basically decided to retire. And when Doctor meets him again, he mentions that Benton is since left the army. He become the way his words are, described as a car salesman. He does bring up Henry Sullivan, where he is working for the UN. He does bring up Elizabeth Shaw, Joe Grant, and Sarah Jane Smith, but he does remember them for some reason. He remembers 2 guys, but not the 2 girls. Not really sure. Now, they do explain this some kind of mental stuff, but it's related to the story, so don't worry. But his is interesting, though, the fact that he's actually brought up those 3 names. For Sarah Jane, this is the first time her name has been mentioned in the series. Probably since her last appearance in the show, which was in the Hand of Evil. That was her last appearance in the series. That was back in like 1977. It's been several years. Though she would come back after this. Yeah, she would come back in the 20th anniversary special later on that season. As for the Kate Elizabeth Shaw, this probably is the first time her name has been brought up in this series since she left the show, or when she left off screen at the start of John Pertwee's second year of the show. Joe Grant, this probably is the first time for her. She's been brought up since probably since she left the show at this point in time. But you couldn't exactly remember. But then, of course, we have Tegan Nyssa, where they end up in 1997, mentioned because the others are not in the 1983, because they brought up the Queen's Jubilee, was Silver Jubilee. So, yeah, because at that point in time, Queen Elizabeth was in the for 25 years. Sadly, she's no longer alive, so we actually have the Brigadier, appearance-wise, kind of the way he looked back in the 70s. You could say that they probably de-aged him 2 years. Just put a mustache on him. That or could be they put like a mask on him. So he gets caught up in the TARDIS, and of course they think this guy they meet is the Doctor, may regenerate again, but nope, it's not the Doctor. And by the way, the first person who notices that this guy is clearly not the Doctor, is Tegan. I'm like, that's interesting. Yes, not Nyssa, not the Brigadier. Tegan is the one who notices. I'm like, that's interesting. I do like the fact that she's actually utilized this story. Now here's the thing, it's been a handful of stories since the events of Earthshock, and I do like the fact that she's actually doing some stuff in the story. But here's kind of the problem with one of the characters. And there was one person who basically, I watched a review of this. I do agree with his opinion. A lot of the time, Nyssa is given virtually nothing to do. And this story, yeah, it's completely obvious the fact she's given virtually nothing to do. Because, what is her thing to do? shove off the TARDIS, basically have her sit in the sidelines a lot of the story, because not focus on her. I'm glad that Tegan gets a lot of focus in the story, because she's an absolute great character. And sadly, put Nyssa will leave for next year, which I'll discuss in the next video. And then we have this guy who claims to be a doctor, even though really isn't. He has a completely different clothes, and then we see after he's mutated, he changes from this scarred face to this guy who looked like part of his scalp is missing, showing off his freaking brain. And apparently his colleagues did the same thing. And apparently it's all guys. No women for some reason. Oh, and also the way that the Brigadier is written for the 1977 version is that he's a sexist. Because it was the late 70s. I don't know if the Brigadier was like that, because here's kind of the thing comes the Brigadier in the course of Doctor Who. If you might be curious though, prior to this story, the ones I've seen anyways, has he ever been depicted as a sexist? Not really. He doesn't have a problem with women at all. Not that I can think of. I'm not sure why the writer wrote this version of this character like this. Oh, and by the way, when he returns Battlefield, he's actually happily married. Well, to his second wife at the time, because he actually divorced his first wife because of overworked. So, oh yeah, by the way, the 1983 version of the Brigadier has got a homing device. Yes. Oh, by the way, he's a teacher at this school that Turlo's at. And what does he teach? Mathematics. Which you think, that's strange for a guy who basically was a military guy. Why the heck would he teach mathematics for? I'm sure he had been smart, but because the way he was normally written, it's like he got so bored whenever they talk about science stuff. So why the heck would he teach mathematics for? It makes no freaking sense at all. Oh, and they also bring up the fact that Turlo's one of his students. Yeah, that thing was just by sheer coincidence. Oh, by the way, for a school, we do not see a classroom. We see the exterior of the school. And by the way, guess how many rooms we see in the entire place? One room. And that is the medical ward. That's it. We do see a hallway a couple times in the story. But do we see inside of someone's office? Nope. Do we see a classroom? Nope. Do we see a dormitory? Not really. The only room we see aside from the medical ward and the hallway is, well, the quarters of the Brigadier, which is a house nearby the school. Yes, an actual house. Now, the Brigadier, not sure when he got this house, because he also had the house in 1977, so I'm assuming he must have got this between Terror of the Zygons and this story, because he had that far back. So then, of course, it started traveling with the fake Doctor, while the real Doctor is in 1983 with Turlo and the Brigadier, and then they get to the ship. The whole thing with this one's like keep going back between the ship and the TARDIS, which I thought was kind of weird. I think it's at least appreciative though the fact that the TARDIS exterior is seen more than just a couple scenes of the whole story. It was better than the way it was in, let's say. Well, actually, no. Peter Davis's one, basically, they actually showed the exterior a lot more. Well, the concert room. Oh, there's even mention in this episode of the Zero Room. Yes, the Zero Room. The very room that was basically only appeared in one story, Castrovalva, where the room was ejected in order to save the TARDIS. Yes, I thought that was interesting that brought up the Zero Room. Yeah, the Zero Room was mostly put this blank room, which basically allows Doctor to meditate, and then other stuff basically gets him basically involved. Yeah. Now, if in case you watch the story, you probably noticed though from Castro this one that Tegan's outfit is completely different. Why the change of attire, you might ask? Because between seasons she got fired from her job. The character, anyways, not the actress. Yes, they also had kind of where she kind of left the show and then came back at the start of the following season, which I'll get to. We'll talk about Arc Infinity. But I do like this attire, and she actually would wear this attire throughout the rest of basically the season. And she and Nissa had this thing where the one thing at least appreciate for Nissa for this episode is that Nissa is allowed to show off some skin. Yes, which is great. Now Tegan mostly the only skin we saw for her is her sexy legs, but never much skin to show up this episode, which I like. I like her outfit. Of course, some people have always said to joke the fact that Nissa and Tegan were. I've not heard this from. This is not just one person. There's been several people who basically try to fanship Niga and Tegan and Nissa as a lesbian couple. Because these two were just really good friends. And here's the thing. That's fan stuff does it. Is there anything official to mention these two were lesbians? No. No, they weren't. Now, I will bring up this, though, in a future episode of this review series. I will be discussing Nissa's debut in Keeper Tracking, which I'm looking forward to discussing that one. Yep. So, well, mostly it's like going back over the ship, and of course they go back to the ship, and they see the room, and of course they reunite with everybody. The two Brigadiers do not meet with each other toward the end of episode 4. Yes, in this 4-parter. And so, the Black Guardian thinks that Tegan's an idiot, thinks he's going to try to destroy him. He thinks because he doesn't exactly follow what he wants him to do. He thinks, oh yeah, the creature's not a threat to anybody, it's a threat to the Doctor. So, what do these creatures want the Doctor to do? Give up his remaining regeneration cycles to allow him to die. That is seriously their plan. And also, unintentionally, they infect Nissa and Tegan. Well, Mawdryn did anyways. He infected both of them. Now, here's the thing, though. They're from a different species than the Doctor. They're not Gallifreyans, per se. But they do mention their elders expelled them. What species they came from, don't know. I do like their ship. It looks freaking gorgeous. Mostly we don't see much of the ship at all. From what I can tell from the ship, we see the air. We have the transplanet ball. We see the laboratory. We see what looks like it'd be like a storage closet they're kept in, and some hallways. It's almost like the ship is not utilized very much at all. But it's almost like, why would you go back to a ship that they describe the ship as luxurious? But the problem with the ship is we don't see much of it. Like, the exterior, yeah, we see plenty of that. We see that a couple times throughout the story. But I'm talking about the interior. I mean, the way this thing looks like the thing is about 10, 20 decks. Apparently, the laboratory is on like a lower level for where they normally landed. So they try to, the only way they know about the infected with the virus is when they briefly leave. Where they get infected, they start aging like crazy. And then they go back and they try to reverse, and they end up being turned into children. Nessa and Tegan turn into children. So they go back, and then eventually, okay, let's just use the regenerations to basically cleanse people. And then the Brigadiers come, despite the fact that Turlo was told to keep these two apart. Then these two meet, and then touch, and boom! All the people all die. Yes. So the TARDIS saved them. Yep, and they're both knocked unconscious. Not dead. They're just knocked unconscious. All they did was touch fingertips. And then they're both knocked unconscious. Then, of course, the 1883 ones, they wake up no problem. The 77 ones basically like, he's out for quite a while. So they lie him on the floor in the TARDIS when they get there. And they have the 83 one hiding in their room, which apparently Turtle's in there too for some reason. How he got back on board the TARDIS is not exactly shown, but he's on there. Then, of course, he rides back. Of course, I mentioned about the Doctor. It's another story. He finds him. 83-1 basically says, goodbye, everybody. Now, as for how he gets the homing device, apparently he actually got a homing device from Tegan in 1977. Though apparently that's gone now. Yeah, so maybe he kept it. Don't know. Maybe he kept it for talent purposes. I'm not sure. So, Eventually, with the Mawdryn's men are all dead, and also the crystal the Black Guardian gave to Turlo has been cracked. So does that mean he's been free from the servitude of the Black Guardian? Not really. I'd say this power is going to start slipping per se, like tiny slipping of it. And so by the end of the story, Turlo asks if he can join the crew. And the Doctor's like, sure, why not? And that's how he joins part of the crew. And he remains part of the crew until the penultimate story of the following season. Yeah, so they bring in Turlo partway, basically in the third story of the 20th anniversary show, and then he's gone by the penultimate story. He's gone by Planet of Fire. Do I have a problem with Turlo? No, I think he's a good character. He has been occasionally been back. Now, I've not heard anything much to him associated with Doctor Who since he left the show. As for why he left with Planet of Fire, I don't know yet. Now, oddly enough for Turlo, I've only discussed, this is only like the second story I've discussed with him in it, because the first story I've discussed with him in it, the story, actually was just the third one I've discussed with him, because the first one was the 5 Doctors, and then Resurrection of Daleks, and now this story. I may be going out of order, but don't worry, I'm hoping to cover a lot of his stuff. Yep. So yeah, that's basically it, particular view. Next up is a couple of comic corners. I'll call it a night. Okay, next video. Bye.